Hello, you are watching a fragment of the program. Today is Monday countdown from January 23, 2023. See the full version on Patreon. And thanks to everyone who is becoming our patrons right now. The war has come to its turning point. Observers, analysts and experts are talking about this more and more often. The head of the European Council, Charles Michel, called the next 2 to 3 weeks decisive. Although the war is at a stalemate, the fighting continues, and both sides are preparing for a new round of fierce offensives in late winter or spring. This is how the neat edition describes the structure of the moment. Russia has mobilized 300,000 new soldiers to throw them into battle like living meat, and some Russian arms factories are working around the clock. For example, factories such as Avangard or Krunichev plow non-stop. Western arms suppliers are strengthening the arsenal of the armed forces of Ukraine with armored vehicles and air defense systems. Ukraine and its allies are confident that Western weapons will play a decisive role and give Kyiv a better chance to contain the Russian offensive and even force the Rashists to withdraw. How far is another question. Also in the neat article it is reported that the main goal of future battles is to force Russia into negotiations. Although the authors did not explain who and with whom should negotiate. After so many crimes, after so many victims, Ukrainians are unlikely to want to breathe the same air in the same room with the Rashists. Lavrov states that Russia's war with the West is no longer hybrid, but almost real. The head of the European Council, Charles Michel, warns, the coming weeks, 2 or 3, are decisive. What happens in 2023, and a lot of it depends on the coming weeks, is what will determine our future. Estonia gave Ukraine all its 155mm howitzers. We are giving all of our 155mm howitzers to Ukraine, said Estonian ambassador to Ukraine Kaimo Kusk. And we want to create a precedent in this way so that other countries have no excuse why they cannot provide Ukraine with the necessary weapons to win the war. End of quote. This decision caused hysteria in the Kremlin, where they decided to lower the level of diplomatic relations with Estonia to a chargé d'affaires, and the Estonian ambassador was ordered to leave Russia by February 7. Although officially the Russian Foreign Ministry said that such a decision was made in response to Russophobia and the reduction of staff in the Russian embassy. Now it is possible that Russia may completely break off diplomatic relations with Estonia, which will become a precedent, announcing a number of such démarches in the future. And in the US Congress they called for the transfer of Atticus missiles to Ukraine for strikes in the Crimea. This was stated by the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Representatives of the U.S. Congress, Republican Michael McCall. According to him, Atticus missiles with a range of up to 300 kilometers are necessary because it is from the territory of Crimea that Russia launches drones to destroy Ukraine's critical infrastructure. And in Crimea itself, the occupiers are clearly preparing for active defense. Moreover, judging by the deployment of Soviet junk, there can be no talk of any offensive actions. In the Medvedivka-Jankoy-Armyansk triangle, 15 to 20 armored and tank groups of Rashists are now concentrated, and this mass is more like the accumulation of a resource for defense than the creation of a capacity to support the southern grouping as part of a certain offensive. It is obvious that the occupiers do not have enough forces and means to conduct active hostilities, with an offensive along the broad southern front. And those that are concentrated have a depletion period of up to 2 weeks, after which the gates to the Crimea will be opened in a through mode. Realizing this, the Rashists are preparing to plunder the peninsula. Recently, the leadership of the Crimean museums, universities, hospitals, theaters began to receive instructions to urgently draw up a list of property of value and subject to export. Agencies are also required to calculate the weight and volume of valuable and important property, and many Crimeans began to massively withdraw money from their accounts, realizing that Russian banks would leave along with the invaders and no one would return the money to them. By the way, the hybrid entry of Sberbank into the Crimea, with its mobile branches on wheels, is precisely aimed at increasing the non-cash turnover of funds that should leave Crimea along with the banks. And it is hardly necessary to wait until the Rashists introduce a limit on cash withdrawals. Against the background of obvious preparations for the loss of Crimea, The contours of contradictions between the Kremlin groups are becoming more and more clear. But more on that later, in the full version of Countdown. Become our patrons now and look further in this program. Madness covers the cave from top to bottom. In Krasnodar, you can meet an imaginary Putin's wife on a bus or go knocked out because of a mohawk on your head. And in the State Duma, Deputy Milanov was completely tormented by blue asses. Serious turbulence is observed at the top of the vertical, where space is blown by all the winds. Prigozhin loses the trust of the leader, although he continues to let his thugs go free. And not far from the Valdai residence, the Panzer C-1 air defense missile system was installed. The mobilization is over, but it continues. According to Peskov, Putin's mobilization decree provides not only for the call of the required number of people, but also for other activities, therefore it continues to operate. So the military commissars continue to deliver vouchers to heaven for nothing. Navalness, who came in large numbers to Georgia, received a rebuff from a local resident, and at the same time they showed their true character. Sectarianism is what it is, you can't hide it. And the last one for today, while the oligarch Potanin, who has bought everything he can, is giving interviews, Alisher Usmanov announces that he is retiring from active work and leaving the RSPP in connection with his retirement. Flycat switches to Uzbekistan, and that's all for today. See the full version on Patreon, and thanks to everyone who is becoming our patrons right now. Hugs to everyone, see you on Thursday. Glory to Ukraine.